Hi guys, welcome back. So, I'm trying a new angle out today so I have more natural light. Tell me if you like it. So, today's video is about self-harm and the DSM. What does the DSM say about self-harm and how has it evolved over time? So, if that interests you, please stay. Side note, this video might be quite long, so if you're only interested about the DSM V and what it says about self-harm, you can go to this time in the video. So first off, what is the DSM? DSM stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it is edited by the APA, the American Psychiatric Association. It's the manual that is used to diagnose every mental illness. It is a very, very important book that is used by every clinician and is the big reference in psychiatry / psychology / psychopathology. So when did self-harm appear in the DSM for the first time? So the first edition of the DSM was in 1952, I believe, after the Second World War, but the DSM didn't mention self-harm until the fourth edition, which was in 1994. The fourth edition is where a lot of personality disorders were added and was added BPD or borderline personality disorder. So self-harm appeared for the first time as the fifth diagnostic criteria of BPD. Side note, that doesn't mean that everyone with BPD does self-harm. There's, I'm pretty sure it's 9 diagnostic criteria and you have to meet at least 5. But that means you can totally have BPD and not self-harm, although many of people with BPD do self-harm. So this context is very, very interesting to know to understand why we treat and see self-harm as we do today. It is often only seen as a symptom on something else, and it is widely treated as something from BPD. As I've talked about a few times now, specialized treatment for self-harm is very, very hard to come by. But when you can find it, it's usually only aimed at people with BPD. And the fact that there is no specialized treatment also, to me, comes from the fact that it is only seen as a symptom of another disorder or another issue. So why would you make specialized programs and stuff like that for something that is only a symptom of something else? Which, side note, is why I think we really need self-harm to become an actual diagnosis, but I will make a video all about that one day. So that was the DSM IV in 1994, but today we are at the DSM V that came out in 2013. In the DSM V, self-harm is still the fifth diagnostic criteria of BPD. That hasn't changed. But what has changed, and that is very, very exciting, is that self-harm appeared somewhere else. But to really understand what I'm gonna say next, we first have to do a bit of anatomy of the DSM. So the DSM is a huge book, and it actually has 3 sections. Section 1 is the DSM basics on how to use the DSM and stuff like that. Section 2 is the most widely known section because it is the biggest. It is almost 700 pages, and this is where you can find all the diagnostic criteria and codes for every mental disorders. But there is a third section that really not that many people know about, which is called Emerging Measures and Models. And this is basically where the DSM puts everything they're not super sure about or new things they basically want to test out and stuff like that, especially in the conditions to further study parts of this third section. And this is where self-harm appeared, in the conditions to further study on page 803, I think. But there is a reason why most people don't know about this conditions to further study part of it. It's because it can't be used for actual diagnosis. These proposed criteria sets are not intended for clinical use. Only the criteria sets and disorders in section 2 of DSM V are officially recognized and can be used for clinical purposes. So the goal of this section is to give common language to researchers and clinicians that want to further study those conditions. And the hope is that it will encourage further study to maybe make those actual diagnoses and pass them into section 2 if that's what the research shows should be done. So I'm saying this once again, this is not an official diagnosis. You can't diagnose yourself with non-suicidal self-injury, and you should not diagnose yourself with anything. Here is a video on my thoughts on self-diagnosis if you want to know more. But I still wanted to talk to you about what this section says about self-harm, or actually it has the name non-suicidal self-injury, which is the more proper scholarly term for self-harm. So I wanted to read to you those proposed criteria and talk with you a bit about what I thought about them. So, criteria A. In the last year, the individual has, on 5 or more days, engaged in intentional self-inflicted damage to the surface of his or her body of a sort likely to induce bleeding, bruising, or pain, e.g. cutting, burning, stabbing, hitting, excessive rubbing, with the expectation that the injury will lead to only minor or moderate physical harm, i.e. there is no suicidal intent. So there's a few things in this part that I find very, very interesting. First, I really like that they're not just focused on cutting, but that they recognize that a lot of other behaviors like bruising, like punching yourself, can be self-harm. But they're not opening the door as wide as to say everything that is self-destructive is self-harm, because you know guys, that is one of my pet peeves and I have done a few videos on that. Second, I really think that it is very important that they mention that there is no suicidal intention behind it. And third, I find the on 5 or more days part quite interesting. I think it shows some chronicity in the self-harm, so it's not a one-time thing. And I like that they formulated it to say on 5 or more days. And it's not, well, on the same day you've self-harmed 5 times, which is already a concern. You should seek out medical attention for that, all of that. But I think it's great that they said it has to have happened at least 5 days in the last year. I think that's pretty great, although I might up this a bit because I'll talk about that later because it relates to other things. So let's keep on going. Criteria B. The individual engages in the self-injurious behavior with one or more of the following expectations. 1. To obtain relief from a negative feeling or cognitive state. 2. To resolve an interpersonal difficulty. Or 3. To induce a positive feeling state. Note, the desired relief or response is experienced during or shortly after the self-injury, and the individual may display patterns of behavior suggesting a dependence on repeatedly engaging in it. So I'm not super sure how I feel about this one. First, I feel like point 1 and point 3 are basically the same thing, or maybe the point 3 is the consequence of point 1. I am not really sure what they meant exactly, and I'm not really sure what they mean about the point 2 either. Do they mean it was a way to emotionally blackmail people, so you self-harm so people feel bad about you, or they're not mad at you anymore? Is that what they're saying? If this is what they're saying, I don't think this should be included in the diagnosis. I don't think this is the same issue as what they're talking about. I think this is another issue. Or is it because the person has an interpersonal difficulty which makes them feel bad, and then to cope with that feeling, they self-harm? In which case, how is it different than point 1? I'm a bit confused about all of these points. Maybe it's because it's not my first language, so if there's something I didn't get, please leave it in the comments. And I really like the notes too. I think it helps it make it more precise. C. The intentional self-injury is associated with at least one of the following. 1. Interpersonal difficulties or negative feelings or thoughts such as depression, anxiety, tension, anger, generalized distress, or self-criticism occurring in the period immediately prior to the self-injurious act. 2. Prior to engaging in the act, a period of preoccupation with the intended behavior that is difficult to control. 3. Thinking about self-injury that occurs frequently, even when it is not acted upon. So again, I think this is a very important criteria to help people understand why people self-harm and what is the goal behind it. So it basically says that before self-harming, you either feel very bad or feel an urge, a craving to self-harm, and that maybe even when you don't actually self-harm, you still have those thoughts, you still have those cravings, you still have all of that. And I'm really glad that they acknowledged those cravings. I think this is a key part of addiction, and this is a key part of self-harm as a disorder, and I'm really glad they put it in. For the point 3, I really relate to that, not now, but when I was still active in self-harming and in the depth of this illness. Yes, I'm calling this an illness. I was thinking about self-harm a lot, about how I would hide it, how I would do it next time, all of that, so I really relate to this one. So criteria D. The behavior is not socially sanctioned, e.g. body piercing, tattooing, part of a religious or cultural ritual, and is not restricted to picking a scab or nail biting. Again, I agree with this one. I think this is one where you can really see that they collaborated with the ISSS, which I have already talked about, which is the organization that has made the best definition of self-harm to my knowledge. And this is a part that I think they clearly took from them, which is a good thing. I don't really know how I feel about the scab picking and nail biting part of this though. On one side I can understand that yeah, it's not really self-harm, you're not really harming yourself, but at the same time I could imagine scenarios where it would fit all the other criterias, and in this case why should it be excluded? I'm not really sure. Tell me what you think. So criteria A, this is almost the last one guys, please stay with me. The behavior or its consequences cause clinically significant distress or interference in interpersonal, academic, or other important areas of functioning. So this type of criteria is something you will find in basically every DSM diagnosis. The behavior or what's going on has to be a problem for the person and their functioning. If this is something that is posing no problem to the individual, to how they function, to the society around them, this won't be a diagnosis in the DSM. But I think sometimes, or maybe this was only me, but I didn't really know what clinically significant meant, and I took it to mean, well, you have to be bedbound and not able to work and not able to socialize at all, and I really don't think that's what it means, and I really don't think that's what we should take it as. If this is causing you trouble, if this is causing you discomfort or distress, this is a clinically significant distress or interference, at least I think it is. So don't take this criteria as to mean you have to be bedbound and self-harming every 24 minutes to mean that this is a clinically significant distress. And last one, criteria F, the behavior does not occur exclusively during psychotic episodes, delirium, substance intoxication, or substance withdrawal. In individuals with a neurodevelopmental disorder, the behavior is not part of a pattern of repetitive stereotypes. The behavior is not better explained by another mental disorder or medical condition. Again, this not better explained by something else or another mental disorder part is something that you will find in virtually every diagnosis in the DSM. It shouldn't be better explained by something else. Other than that, I am very glad that they made the distinction with self-injury in people with intellectual disabilities or autism, because I think this is a very frequent misconception. And I think those two are very different, so I'm glad they made the distinction. And they also made the distinction with trichotillomania and dermatillomania, which I think is very good, because those are closer to OCD and anxiety disorders than to self-harm, at least from what I know. So those were the proposed criteria for non-suicidal injury. If I relate them to my experience, I would have ticked all of them. Obviously not today, because I've been in recovery for a few years, but back then, I would definitely have checked all of those boxes. And I would be very interested to know if you would have too. So please tell me in the comments what you thought about those criteria, about the DSM, about what they have to say about self-harm, what you think they should change, what you think they should add. Something I think they should have added or made more clear is the addiction component of self-harm. They have from time to time with the preoccupation and the stuff like that they have put in it, but I think they could make it more clear and make it criteria that you have to meet, not you have to have this or this, and one can be an addiction feature and this one might not. I don't know, should it only be described as an addiction? What do you think of? And that's gonna be it for today. As always, if you want to chat with me, you can hit me up on Instagram, link is in the description. I answer to every DM I get. I realized that I didn't do this part of my outro the last few videos. Anyway, I am also filming a type of vlog, I guess you could say, because I'm currently lowering my quetiapine. So I'm doing little bits and bobs of vlogs, and that will come out in, I guess, a few months. But stay tuned for that and subscribe if you want to see this video. If you like this video, please subscribe, give me a like and share this video so I can gain more visibility, and I will see you very soon. Bye guys.